Hello everybody, it is Jazz, and on my channel I talk about nursing, hair, and holistic health and wellness. If this is your first time clicking on one of my videos, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you stick around and subscribe to my channel so that you can hang out with me some more. If you are returning, thank you so much. I really appreciate the support. As you can tell, today we are going to be talking all about the NCLEX. In this video, I'm going to cover registering for the NCLEX. I'm going to cover where you can find resources to read in detail for yourself all the things I'll be covering today in this video. I'm going to be covering the NCLEX Test Plan, which breaks down the content areas of the NCLEX, and I'm going to just be sharing and going over some general important information I think you should know about the NCLEX. That being said, in today's video, I'm specifically going to be talking all about the current version of the NCLEX. But I am making a part 2 to this video that will be coming out soon as well, where I talk specifically about the next generation NCLEX, which is said to roll out in April of 2023, so a little less than a year from now. So for some of you, if you are currently in nursing school, you might actually be taking the next generation of the NCLEX, so definitely come back to watch that video as well. I did also already film a video specifically talking about my experience taking the NCLEX, so I'll definitely link that if you want to check it out. I did take the NCLEX 2 times, so if you're interested in that at all, definitely check out the video as well. Now, let's go ahead and jump into this video and get started. All right, first up on our agenda, we're going to talk about registering to take your NCLEX. When talking about this, there are going to be 2 different entities that we are talking about for this process. The first is going to be Pearson VUE. Pearson VUE is the company that actually administers the NCLEX exam. The other entity we're going to be talking about is your Nursing Regulatory Body, or NRB. What is an NRB? Basically, an NRB is just like a government agency in each state that regulates the nursing practice of that state. So for example, I live in Nevada. We have the Nevada State Board of Nursing. That is our NRB here in Nevada. So not only does the NRB regulate nursing practice in your state, but that is who you actually apply to get your license through. The point of taking the NCLEX is to become a registered nurse and receive your license. Your NRB in your state is who actually gives you your nursing license. There's things that you have to do for each of these 2 entities in order to go ahead and register for and take your NCLEX. So we're going to start with the very first step. The first step is going to be with your NRB, and that's going to be doing your background check. Now, rightly so, because we're applying to become nurses, the background check is kind of extensive and you have to do fingerprinting. That was the very first step I took in the process of registering for my exam. I actually took my fingerprints right before my last semester of nursing school started. My school suggested that we give it months of time just so that you're not waiting on your fingerprints at the end. Mind you, this was now about a year ago, so I don't know if the process of getting fingerprints back is still slow or not. But just keep that in mind, that you want to make sure you're doing your fingerprints far enough ahead of time so you're not waiting on that at the end of the process. After that first step is done, the next step towards the end of your semester is just to pay people money. Towards the end of nursing school, with your NRB, you're going to go ahead and apply for your licensure, which, as you can guess, it costs money to apply for your license. I don't know if every state is the same. Here in Nevada, I paid $100 to apply for my nursing license to the Nevada State Board of Nursing. And once you start your application with your NRB, you're probably going to have an online portal where it tells you all of the steps of what you need to do. So on top of paying to apply for your license with your NRB, you're going to have to pay Pearson VUE, which, like I mentioned, is the company that administers the NCLEX. You're going to have to pay them to take the NCLEX, and it costs $200 to take the NCLEX. Once you are done paying your NRB and paying Pearson VUE, then it's kind of just a waiting game. Once you have graduated school, your school is going to go ahead and send off transcripts to your NRB, basically like confirming that yes, this student has completed their program, met all the requirements, and graduated, and they can sit for their boards. Once your NRB receives the transcripts from your school, your NRB is then going to send you an authorization to test form, or ATT. It's basically just an email that gives you a code that you can go ahead and now register for your exam. So once you receive your ATT, then you go back to Pearson VUE, who administers your NCLEX, and you can go ahead and actually schedule your exam. Now, I cannot tell you with absolute certainty how fast you're going to get your ATT. In my experience, I graduated August 19th, 2021, and I received my ATT August 30th, 2021, so 11 days later. The second time I took my NCLEX, I paid on December 17th, 2021, and I received my ATT 4 days later on December 21st, 2021. One thing I did want to mention is that you can take your NCLEX anywhere. You don't have to take your NCLEX in the state that you're applying for your license for. For example, if you are applying for your licensure in Minnesota, but you want to take your NCLEX in Florida, you could do that. Now, after you go ahead and register to take your NCLEX with Pearson VUE, they're going to send you an acknowledgement of registration, which is just how it sounds. It's basically just saying that, yes, you are now registered to take your NCLEX. So, boom, there we are. We're all set to go. Now we're registered for the NCLEX. Okay, next, I'm just going to walk through where you can find resources to read in detail as much as you want all about the NCLEX, because there are a lot of resources that you can access. Don't mind me if I'm kind of looking off to the side. I have my laptop and my notes over here, just disclaimer. So basically, your one-stop shop for NCLEX resources is going to be, you guessed it, NCLEX.com. Once you go to NCLEX.com, if you just scroll down a little bit, there's going to be 3 different little sections that say prepare for success, be ready for exam day, and get your results. You go ahead and click on prepare for success. This area is going to have basically just all the resources you need to know about information for the NCLEX. I'm going to go ahead and start at the very top. You're going to see the 2022 NCLEX Candidate Bulletin. This candidate bulletin basically tells you everything about the NCLEX. It's a 19-page document when you open it up, and it breaks it down into sections of registering for the exam, scheduling your exam, so what we just talked about, what to bring to the test site, test rules, day of the exam, NCLEX content, so on and so forth. Pretty much anything you could ever want to know about the NCLEX is in here, and you can access that if you want. Secondly, back on this prepare page, underneath the NCLEX Candidate Bulletin, there's going to be a 2022 Information Flyer. This one is just a 2-page little sheet that reviews how to go ahead and schedule, register for your NCLEX. Lastly, if you scroll down a little bit more on that page, underneath the information flyer is going to be a section that says test plans. The test plan is basically just a very in-depth, detailed, long 65-page document talking about the content of the NCLEX. So basically, the test plan, it breaks down the NCLEX into 4 main categories. Those categories are safe and effective care environment, health promotion and maintenance, psychosocial integrity, and physiological integrity. Now, the safe and effective care environment and physiological integrity are further broken down into subcategories. So within safe and effective care environment, you have management of care and safety and infection control. Now, within physiological integrity, you're going to have basic care and comfort, pharmacological and parenteral therapies, reduction of risk potential, and physiological adaptation. If you scroll down to the 10th page of the PDF document, that's where it's going to show the main categories that the NCLEX test plan is broken up into. Now, if you scroll down one more page onto the 11th page of the PDF, it's going to tell you what percentage of the items on your NCLEX are going to fall into each of those categories. So for example, 2 of the 4 main categories of health promotion and maintenance and psychosocial integrity, 6 to 12% of the items on your NCLEX are going to fall within that category, and then you can see the rest of the subcategory percentages here as well. If you go to the 12th page, it's going to show you that exact same information but in a pie chart form, if that's easier for you to process. And then as you go down and scroll, it's going to go into very, very specific detail of each of those categories and subcategories of the types of questions that the NCLEX will be asking you within those categories. So if you're kind of wondering, okay, well, what does management of care mean? You can see here it says management of care is going to give you a definition. The nurse provides and directs nursing care that enhances the care delivery setting to protect the client and healthcare personnel. That's what management of care means. And then under that is going to say activity statements of what nurses are expected to do for management of care. For example, one of those activity statements is to advocate for client rights and needs. It's going to give you a definition. It's going to give you activity statements that nurses are expected to do within that category. And then lastly, it's going to tell you what content could be on your NCLEX relating to that area. So for example, underneath management of care, you could expect to see questions about advanced directives, advocacy, assignment, delegation, and supervision, case management. And for each of these sections, it's going to go further into detail about what you're expected to do. So underneath advocacy, discuss identified treatment options with client and respect their decisions. Provide information on advocacy to staff members. Okay, so you can see this goes very, very, very in-depth and detailed. I wouldn't suggest going and reading this whole thing because I kind of think that's pointless, but this is useful if, for example, one of these areas you're just like, I don't even know what this means. Like, what should I be expected to know? Or what is a nurse expected to do in this area? Then you can go ahead and go back to this document and it's going to tell you very specifically what you need to know. Now, you can also find information about the NCLEX Test Plan in that first document I told you about, the 2022 NCLEX Examination Candidate Bulletin. This one is just going to go over the overview of the test plan on page 16 of the PDF document. It's going to go ahead and show you that chart with the percentages like I said. So that's pretty much all we're going to talk about for the test plan. If you want to read more in detail about it, please feel free to go ahead and do so. Okay, so now we've covered registering for the exam. We have covered resources about the exam, where to find them. We've talked a little bit about the test plan. Now I'm just going to go over some of the most important things I think you should know about the NCLEX. So just in general, how does the NCLEX work? The NCLEX is what is called a computerized adaptive test, or CAT test. Basically, computerized adaptive testing, it just means that as you go along and you're answering questions, if you get it right, your test is going to adjust to that and it's going to give you a harder question next. If you get the question wrong, same thing, your test is going to adjust to that and it's going to give you an easier question next. So it basically just moves up and down, giving you harder or easier questions based on how you answer so that it can more accurately determine your knowledge versus a regular test. For example, like in nursing school, when you have an exam, everybody's test is composed of the same questions, maybe shuffled around in a different order, but everybody gets the same questions, and you know, whether you get a question right or wrong, it doesn't change the difficulty of the test at all. Everybody just gets those same questions and answers all those questions. Now, because this is an adaptive test, there are a range of total questions that candidates can end up answering. So the minimum amount of questions on the NCLEX is 75. The maximum is 145. And basically, you don't know how many questions you're going to get. You just have to keep answering the questions until your test shuts off. So how does your test know whether you know the information and passed or do not know the information and failed? There are 3 different ways that your test determines whether you pass or fail. The first one is called the 95% confidence interval rule. And this is how most people's test goes. With this scenario, your test is gonna go ahead and shut off once it is 95% certain that either you know the material or don't know the material. Or in the way they phrase it, they're gonna say whether you are above or below the passing standard. The second scenario is going to be the maximum length exam scenario. If the test is determining that you're like very close to the passing standard, it's going to administer all 145 questions to you, and it's going to forget about the 95% confidence thing, and it's basically just going to look at like all of the questions and give what's called a final ability estimate. They don't really go into detail of how they come up with this final ability estimate, but then it's gonna make this final ability estimate. And if that estimate is above the passing standard, then that candidate will pass the test. If that candidate is right at or below the passing standard, they're going to fail. Which the first time around, this was my situation. I answered all 145 questions and I ended up failing. When I got my report back after I failed my first NCLEX, it literally said near passing standard. The last scenario is the run out of time scenario, which the NCLEX exam does have a 5-hour time limit in order for you to complete it. So if you run out of time, but you haven't hit at least question 75, so the minimum number of questions that you could take to pass or fail the NCLEX, then you're going to fail. So basically, if it takes you 5 hours and you haven't hit question 75 yet, then you're going to fail the exam. If you have answered at least 75 questions, it's going to do the same thing as the maximum length exam scenario, where it comes up with this final ability estimate. And once again, if your final ability estimate is above the passing standard, then you pass. If it is at or below the passing standard, then you fail. So then these last few points are just going to be things about when you're actually taking the exam. So when you're taking the exam, you cannot skip questions and then come back. So when you're on a question, you have to answer that question before you can move to the next one, and you can't go back to any previous questions. So then as far as the actual questions on the NCLEX, there are a few different types of questions you can see. The most common is going to be just a multiple choice question. So it's going to give you a question and there's going to be multiple different answers and you choose one. The next is going to be everybody's favorite, select all that apply. So that's going to be where it's a question, there's going to be multiple different answers and you have to select each one that is true. Now, in the case of the current NCLEX, there are no partial credit. So for select all that apply answers, you have to select all the answers that are right, and you cannot select any answers that are wrong in order to get that question right. On top of that, there are also fill in the blank calculation questions. So that might be, like med administration questions. There's drag and drop ordered response, where you just have to you put something in order of steps. There's going to be different charts and exhibit type questions where it'll give you maybe assessment data that you have to look through. And there can also be graphics. So for example, heart rhythm strips. So like I mentioned before, you do have 5 hours to complete your NCLEX, but you can take breaks and you can take as many breaks as you want. But just keep in mind that the timer does not stop when you take your break. So while you're on your break, your exam clock time is still running. Okay, so that's basically all the information I have for this video, all about the current version of the NCLEX-RN. I hope that this video answered any questions you might have been having regarding the NCLEX-RN. If, however, you still do have any questions about the NCLEX-RN, please feel free to leave those down below in a comment and I will try my best to find the answer for you, or if not, point you to a resource that should be able to give you your answer. And for anyone who is currently getting ready for the NCLEX or is in nursing school and will inevitably eventually have to take the NCLEX, I wish the very best of luck to you. I just want to say you definitely got it. You got it in the bag. You will get it done. You will pass and you will earn that license. I just wanted to say once again, thank you so much for tuning into this video today. If you are interested to hear about the next generation NCLEX, definitely subscribe so you know when that video comes out. Or if you're interested in any of my other content areas, please go ahead and subscribe as well so that you know when I post new videos and you can come back and hang out with me. All right, thank you so much, everybody. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye, guys.